Okay, we're holding here on Daf Memches Ois Beis. We're in Chelik Beis, Perek Aleph. We spent last week talking about Ikari Emunah. How we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the whole world, Yesh Me'ayin, that there was no world. There was no world, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a world, a universe. All of matter, all of time and space. And now we're going to connect this to Shabbos. So he begins, Ksiv vayichulu hashamayim va'aretz, vayichal vayishbois. The pasuk, the psukim, at the end of the creation, which we say every Friday night, twice, 3 times actually. We say it once in Shmona Esrei, and then we say it after Shmona Esrei, and then we say it in Kiddush, 3 times, vayichulu hashamayim va'aretz chol tzavam. So Rapinkus points out here that there are 3 Lashonos. There's the first pasuk, Vayichulu Hashemayim v'Haaretz chol tzavam. The world came to completion, and then the next pasuk afterwards, Vayichal Elokim b'Yom HaShvi. Hashem finished. The previous pasuk already said that it finished, but now it says Hashem finished. And later on in the pasuk, Vayishbois b'Yom HaShvi. He rested. 3 different Lashonos. 3 different Lashonos of finishing. And at the end, the last pasuk, Vayavarech Elokim es Yom HaShvi vayikadesho usoi, ki bo Shabbos mikol malachto shabar l'masos Shabbos. So there are 2 Lashonos of Vayichulu, Vayichal, and then the Lashon of Vayishbois, and then in the last pasuk it says Hashem blessed and was mekadesh the 7th day because of the Shabbos, because of the last of the 3 Lashonos. The Vayishbois. So what are these 3 Lashonos? This is what he comes here to explain in Ois Beis. Again, this is a continuation of Chidush HaOlam, what we discussed last week, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world out of nothing, and He Himself is the only existence. So now we're going to see this. How does this relate to Shabbos? So again, the first lashon, vayichulu hashamayim va'aretz v'chol tzavam, it sounded almost like they finished themselves. They were completed. Who completed them? Doesn't say. Just that there was a completion. Then the next pasuk it says vayichal Elokim b'yom hashvi malachto hashas. Hashem was the one who completed it. Okay, why do we have to break that into 2 different parts? Why would there have to be a split? And then there's the Vayishbois. Vayishbois is a lashon of resting, or completing, right? You completed, and now you're resting. So, they're really resting by HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Isn't it just a definition of a completion that I'm not working anymore? If I'm not working, so then I'm resting. What is this? What is this Vayishbois? And why is it that this Vayishbois gets a special thing called bracha and kedusha? Bracha and kedusha is dafka Vayishbois. So, Rapinkus comes and he explains there are 3 steps over here. So we're here at the bottom paragraph on Daf Memches. Amnam lefia nemar le'el me'ata psukim mitparish kimin choymer. Now, based on what we learned before, we can understand how these 3 steps work very well with what we discussed about how HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world from nothing. The first thing we want to say is the world is new. The world is new. Maybe there was something before the world. That's why it starts with saying the world ended. That the creation as a whole came to an end. From here we see that there must have been a creator if it was created. It must have been somebody who made something new because it is new. I just want to clarify, maybe it wasn't clear last week a little bit. We were coming to exclude from the Greek philosophy. What is the Greek philosophy? The Greek philosophy is that there's a God, and then there's a world, and both of them existed at the same time. What does that mean? It means there is a creator, but the creator didn't create Yesh Me'ayin. He didn't create something out of nothing. There was already material here. And then the material was used by the creator to create the world that we have. But that material was all here already. Everything was here already. It's very similar to like an evolution type of philosophy where things kind of just developed. You know, monkeys kept bumping into each other until we had humanity. So this type of things happening on its own, everything was here already. And it just happened, has its root in Greek philosophy, that there was always a world. God took that world and formed it. There was always a world. Now, why is that so significant that we're coming to exclude that? Because the yesod of our emunah is Hashem created the world. Hashem created the whole world. So we're coming here in the very first statement and we're saying the world was finished. By saying that the world was finished, we're saying that it started. In order for it to be finished, it had to have been started like we discussed last week. That shows, first of all, the world itself had a beginning. It wasn't always here. So that's the first one. We're coming to exclude, we're trying to take away from the Greek philosophy that the world was created in a way that it was always here. No. The world was finished, which means that it started. That's the first stage. That's by Yechudu Hashemayim V'Haaretz. Even before we start to discuss who was the one who created it, we have to first discuss that it was created from nothing. And therefore, it's already coming to exclude from the Greek philosophy. That's why he continues, V'zu ha'akdama on the top of Daf Mem Tet. V'zu ha'akdama v'yichulu ha'shamayim. Shechala hafsaka b'yitzira. There was an end to creation. Now we can say, well, who did it? Who started it? If there was a finish, that means there was a start. So who started it? Now we can say, oh, Hashem created the world. There is a creator. Yesh Me'ayin. Shemi Zeh Sha'asa Hefsek. Who is the one who made the completion? Now we know who. Theoretically, if you go with the modern day evolution ideas, so that we should be continuing to evolve. Now, for them, that's not such a big deal because they say evolution took millions and millions of years. So we don't see such evolution in such a short span of time, but just hundreds or thousands of years, so it's not necessarily a proof. But theoretically, according to them, things should continue to evolve. There was no end. Because evolution doesn't end, it just continues. Because it never had a starting point, so it never has an ending point either. But here we're saying, no, Hashem finished. He created the world, which means there was a beginning point as well. And that's what we're saying. By Echalokim, Hashem finished. So first, there was no existence. Hashem created from nothing and finished that creation. The second is that it's Hashem who did it. And now the third, what's Vayishbois? Now we can talk about the idea of Shvita. What is the idea of Shvita? We discussed this before, we discussed in the previous section how HaKadosh Baruch Hu is raised above everything. So what happens when Hashem finished creating the world? He entered the world. After the creation of the world, Hashem came into the world. Obviously, Hashem is the whole world. All of creation, all of existence is Hashem. So what does it mean Hashem created the world? Hashem came into the world, It means Hashem let His presence known in the world. The world is full of hiddenness. HaKadosh Baruch Hu hides Himself behind nature. Shabbos, Hashem revealed Himself. Hashem came in. Who created all this? The Melech comes in. Knisas HaMelech LeMedina Tarti Itbe. There are two things when the king comes in. First, now, like we discussed about the chosin who now comes into his chosin, and now everything changes. The flowers are more beautiful. The music sounds better. The atmosphere is electric. Why? Because the chosin is here. And that's the same thing. HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes into the world, everything is more beautiful. The whole world is elevated way beyond what their naturally could be. V'shenis, the second, Etzem Yos HaMelech B'Soicho. Not just the world is better, and now the king is here. V'nei midbar sheklulo shel oila misiyumo moira al chidusho u'moira al zeh shakadosh baruch hu ha'memtzi shel ha'oila m'mloah. So it's coming to teach us of the creation, of the completion of the creation of the Yesh Me'ayin, and that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is here in the world. And He fills up the world. He is the whole world. That's where the Kedusha of Shabbos comes from. The completion of the world, which was on Shabbos, Amoira al Achidish, which proves that Hashem created the world. So that's what it means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu came into the world. That's the Vayishbois. Hashem rested. Hashem rested means that Hashem made His presence known. He's here in the world. That Kedusha of Shabbos comes from the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was here with us. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals that He created the world from nothing. That is where the Keter is, that Hashem is here. It's that Kedusha, it's that moment of that Vayishbois that has Kedusha and Bracha to it. That's not the Tachlis. Eichu shel kedusha mikoyach ha'oira shekarish baruch hu borei imani go'ilam. Ela sheish oit suk shel kedusha elyon yosef. There's a higher level even. Not just that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world and runs the world. Lo rak kedusha mikoyach bechinas ha'boirei haniras mitoich ha'olam. Ela lemalo gevoyim aleim shvisa mikol tzvisas ha'olam. Something is even higher. What is that? That's the shvita. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. HaKadosh Baruch Hu finished the world, and we have Chidush HaOlam. We have that Amunah of Yesh Me'ayin, but now there's a Shvisa. The Shvisa is, that's it. Everything else is done. There are two levels of Kedusha. Kedusha Shal Mala Kol Ha'aretz K'vadoyu. Melo Kol Ha'aretz K'vadoyu. There's a Kedusha. Hashem is everywhere. Hashem fills up the whole world. That's one level of Kedusha. The Kedusha shall cover Hashem mimakoimo kivyocho, and the Kedusha of Hashem Himself, not just the world, the Kedusha of the world. She Kedusha elyoina min male kol haaretz k'vodayi. So the Kedusha of HaKadosh Baruch Hu Himself is bigger than the Kedusha that the world gets from its relationship to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's what it means. Meaning that, yes, it's true, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes in, we see the completion of the whole world. We see this koyach of chidush. We see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the only thing in everything. And we see it in the world, in every aspect of the world. But the Vayishbois is, put all that to the side. Everything about the world, put it on the side. Hashem is here. That's the ikar. Hashem is here in front of us. The Kedusha of Hashem Himself, that is above and beyond anything else. If you recall back in Chelek Aleph, we discussed this. We discussed this when we were talking about Keser We're talking about Melech Adir. We're talking about how there's two aspects of being a king. One is that the king makes everything else better. He puts all the pieces together. He makes everything work together. He uplifts everything. You're only a citizen because of him. He put the whole country together. So what's the focus over there? The focus is on the country. The focus is on all the things that are happening in the world and how the king has a hand in each one of those things, but the focus is still on the thing. So it's the same thing. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. There's a focus of the Kedusha of the world. Look at this beautiful thing in the world. Look at everything in the world. See Hashem in everything in the world. But you're still looking at everything. You're still looking at, like Rabbi Victor Miller writes about looking at nature, looking at fruit. How HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you think HaKadosh Baruch Hu cares what color every single thing is? He does. Because he made everything in a different color. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made the oranges orange. And he made different colored apples. And he makes yellow bananas, and he makes each shape of the fruit a different shape, and it's the pomegranate should be red and pink. Why does the Kodesh Baruch Hu care so much about it? He does. He wants to make every nakuda. They're so important. It should be a little bit more inviting. A person should eat it. A person should enjoy the food a little bit more. Why did he make the oranges taste just like that? And he made that pears and the apples and every single thing. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made every single thing, and you could see Hashem in every single thing. And that's an amazing kedusha. That's Molei Kol Haaretz Kavodoi. Hashem's presence is everywhere in the world. Everywhere you look, you can find Hashem. But there's something higher than that, and that is Hashem Himself. Don't look at all the things that Hashem does. Look at Hashem Himself. That's a much higher level of kedusha. That's the Vayishbois. The Vayishbois is okay. I finished creating the world. Look around the world. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. Now stop a second. Stop. Don't look at the world anymore. Look at me. Look at the Creator. Understand that there's a Creator. The Creator is much bigger than his creations. That is where there's kedusha. That is where there's bracha. That's why the pasuk says, "Dafka an vayishbois." It says, "Vayevarech Elokim es Yom HaShavi vaykedesho." So, Kivo Shabbos mikom malachto, because Hashem rested. What does it mean Hashem rested? It means there was no more work. All the work, put that on the side. There's no more work. What's the work? The work is the world. The whole world. So put the world on the side. Yes, the world is amazing. The world is beautiful. You see Hashem in everything in the world. You want to come to Emunah like the Rambam says? Look at the world. Look at the world and you'll see, how can you not believe in Hashem? It's an amazing world that there is. Now stop for a second. It's all true. But that's not enough for Kedusha. Kedusha and Bracha is from Hashem Himself. That's the Vayishbois. That's we're putting everything else on the side. This is what he says over here at the end of page Mem Tet. Mi'ata yesh listapek b'hagdaras Kedusha Shabbos Kodesh. Now we can try to understand a little bit better. What does it mean, the Kedusha of Shabbos? Ha'ima Kedusha hi be'echus shel vayichal. The Kedusha comes from the finishing, the completion, or Amala Shel Vayishbois, or does it come from the resting? Vazek Siv, and that's what the pasuk says. We just said, Vayevarech Elokim es Yom HaShavi vaykedesho. So, be'eze echus. What's the quality of this Kedusha? Ki bo Shabbos mikom malachtoi. Hainu habracha v'hakdusha. Eino mipnei ki bo chila es kol malachto. The Kedusha doesn't become because I finished, because I completed. Ela ki bo Shabbos, hainu Shabbos HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Kedusha doesn't come from the Maaseh, Vayichal Elokim b'yom HaShvi malachtoi asher asa. The Kedusha doesn't come from the Malacha. It doesn't come from Vayichulu Hashamayim ba'aretz. It doesn't come from that. Where does it come from? It comes from Kivo Shabbos Mikol, because Hashem was Shabbos. That's where it comes from. It's a focus on Hashem. It's not a focus on the thing that He did, that He created. The focus is on Hashem Himself. B'kol inyoni ha'olam. B'yom ha'shvi yis'alo. B'yoshev al kisei kivadoi. Like we sing in the Zmiros. And on Yom HaShvi, Hashem Himself was elevated, and He sat on His kisei kavod. The kedusha shvita hila mala me'inyan kedusha yisoida higilui kavod yisbar ba'olam. Because the focus isn't on the world, the focus is on Hashem. Yes, it's true, the whole thing came about because of the creation of the world. It was part of the process to bring us. But the greatest kedusha comes from putting everything else away. And now let's see Hashem. It's very interesting. I want to be madam of this. For Pinkas doesn't bring this. I want to be madam of this to a very interesting Gemara. Gemara Masechet Megillah, Rashi really. Rashi in the beginning of Megillah and Beis talks about why is it that there's a Shushan Purim? Why was there a Shushan Purim? They talk about Shushan Purim is based on what? It's based on the time, the cities that were surrounded by walls during the times of Yoshua ben Nun. That's how we decide what Shushan Purim is, and it's all based on bringing kavod to Eretz Yisrael. Look at the Rishonim over there. That at the time of the Nes of Purim, the whole Eretz Yisrael was destroyed, and they didn't want to embarrass Eretz Yisrael, so they made a specifically based on the times of Yoshua ben Nun. And then the Gemara asks them, what about Shushan? So it's kind of a funny question, but why does Shushan, which didn't have a wall around it during the times of Yoshua ben Nun, why does it celebrate on Tezvav? Meaning, which cities celebrate on Tezvav Adar? In this year it's Adar Sheni. So cities that were surrounded by a wall during the times of Yoshua ben Nun. Was Shushan surrounded by a wall during the times of Yoshua ben Nun? No. So why should Shushan celebrate on Tezvav? Kind of like a funny question, right? Because that's where the Nes happened. So the question is, what was the Nes? What Nes was it? What was the Nes? So you might say, what do you mean? It was the Nahapochu. The Nahapochu. What was the Nahapochu? One day Haman is the prime minister. A few minutes later, he's hung up on a tree. That's a big Nahapochu, but that didn't happen on Tezvav. So what was it? The Milchama. So in the Milchama, they had 2 days in Shushan, Yud Gimel and Yud Dalid. So maybe they should also be on Yud Dalid. The war was on Yud Dalid. Says Rashi, the Iker Nes is that Klal Yisrael rested. Is that they rested. That's the Iker Nes, that they rested. Can you imagine what it means for a Jew to rest? A Jew in Golos to rest? That's a Nes! It's a Nes that a Jew can rest. It's unbelievable. We can rest. The resting itself is the biggest Nes. We don't have to worry about anything. That's a cause for celebration. Oh, Klal Yisrael can rest. On the day that they rested, that's where we make a Chag. That's the Chag. Because we rested. That's what the Rishonim say. That's the big Nes of Purim. We rested. When we're resting, we don't have to worry about the war. We don't have to. We can rest. They rested on Yud Gimel. They only had 1 day of war, which was on Yud Gimel, and they rested on Yud Dalid. So that's why we make a Chag on the day that we rested. Shoot, the Iker Nes, if you ask me, you can had 2 days of war. Right. If you actually look in a shtickle chiddush with regards to this, if you look in the psukim, it says that they killed many people. I forgot the exact number. Maybe 500 of their enemies. Forgot exactly what the pasuk says. And then Esther asked Achashverosh, "Can we have another day?" No. What's shot in another day? Why do they need another day? Did they wipe out all their enemies? Did they? If they wiped out all their enemies, then why would they need another day? Adrav, it's mashma they didn't wipe out all their enemies because they got another day to fight and they killed even more. Elamai, there must have still been more enemies. It must be then that they didn't do a good job on the first day. They didn't wipe out all their enemies on the first day. They needed another day because they mamish really needed another day. Not just for fun. Because they didn't do a full job. They need another day. So that you need special permission for. So they got special permission and they killed a few more hundred, I think it was another 300 Are there enemies? Oh, now we can rest. Until then, we couldn't rest. We couldn't rest because our enemies were still running wild. We have to wipe out all of our enemies. Now we can have a chag because we can rest. Now, it's obviously not the same thing because we're making a chag because we rested. On Shabbos is the day kiviyachol that Hashem rested. Again, it's not that Hashem needs to rest. Hashem doesn't get tired by working. The resting is that now we're not focused on the work anymore. We're not focused on the work. We can be focused on the one who did all the work. That's where the kedusha is. That's the vayishbois. That we're not focusing on the work, the vayichal, the vayichulu. We're focusing on the vayishbois, the resting. That's where the kedusha is, and that's where he says over here, the kedusha shvita ila mala inyan kedusha yisoida. It's much higher, the kedusha. I'm at the very end of Daf Mem Tes. It's much, much higher. Hukili kavod yisbarach be'olam. It's the greatest revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Who created all this? It's the Rebbeinu Shalom. Mikan gam shama shel Shabbos. Lo al shem vayechal, ela al shem hashvita. We call it Shabbos. It's called Shabbos after Shvisa, after the pasuk of Kivo Shovas Mikom Alachtoi. That's what its name is. Shazem Moira al Melech Elyoin. Noira Moilech Yechidim. It tells us, it teaches us about the king, the creator. Moilech Yechidim b'yoyim Shabbos kodesh. He got his malchus on that day, the day of Shabbos. He sat in the Yashav al Kisei Kivodo. Now we can see our king, our Melech, the one who brought everything together, the one who made everything, but not just the one. He's bigger than everything that he made. Mala mikvot shamayim mizgala bo'lamenu ela me'ein olam haba. Much greater than this world. Much greater, big into olam haba. Let's make a side point over here. It's very interesting. What day did Adam Arishon sin? He sinned on the day he was created, which was Yom Shishi. All of this happened after that. The Gilui of Shabbos happened after the Chet of Adam and Chava in Gan Eden. That's when the first Shabbos was. The greatest Gilui Shechina only came after the Chet of Adam and Rishon. But it didn't share the Shabbos. The first Shabbos, the whole world got to see, wow, this is the Melech. This is the creator. Where did we all come from? Came from the Rebbeinu Shalom. The greatest Gilui. Hashem came in. It's an amazing thing. It wasn't like everything was perfect in Gan Eden. No, they were already thrown out of Gan Eden. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Because Shabbos, everything stops. Shabbos is that Hashem ended his work, and now it's only him. And that's what that's why we say the Veishpoit starts Vayechal, because really they're all one. And that's what he says over here. I'm just going to skip to the end. We don't have so much more time, but on the next page in Oiz Beis, towards the end of the first paragraph. V'im kein kedusha Shabbos einu rak kedusha Hashem Yisbarach hanichnas ka'oreach letoich ha'olam. Not just that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is coming into the world. He's like a guest in the world. Ela kiviyachol ha'olam kulo kadosh b'kedushas Yisbarach. The whole world is filled with the kedusha of Hashem. She is bar al yedei HaShabbos. That's clear through Shabbos. Shemahus Hashemesh v'yareach v'tashamayim. The essence of all the celestial beings, the sun, the moon, the stars, all the vegetation, all the animals, all the birds, all the human, everything. All of this is the Ratzon Hashem. They're His creations. Yesh me'ayin. Umuhus prusas alechem. He davar kodsho shi'alechem. And the whole essence that there is bread is because of the kedusha that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put into the world, that there should be bread. Nimzachal shvisa gemura al kol mohuz ha'olam mitzad atzmo Muhus called davar me'ato who covered shamayim v'sudomidi. So really, these two parts are really connected. There's one big thing over here. Hashem's creation of the world and Hashem's coming into the world are the two aspects that bring out that the emunah that we have, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the whole world, gives kedusha to the world. It shows us that the physical things in the world are not just stam physical things like many the Goyish philosophers believe that there's two different worlds. There's a spiritual world and there's a physical world. No, the physical world is full of kedusha because the physical world has from the creation of Hashem Himself, and He infuses it with kedusha. And then there's the kedusha of Him Himself, that He is here in the world, and all of the things here in the world are also kadosh. Now we can understand through this revelation of Shabbos and the creation from nothing of the world. The Kisei HaKavod is not only up in Shamayim. Yoshchina Azuzo Eino Dafka Begove Miromim. Ela Kisei Kavoido Yoshchinas Uzo Itanu Kan. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is here with us in the world. Kochepet Ba'olam Ukisei Likvoido Yisbarach. Everything in the world is another place for Agidu Yishchina of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The world is elevated. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is here. All of this is what Shabbos is. Hashem is everything, and Hashem infused everything with Kedusha. All of His Yesh Me'ayin. So the essence of Emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu is on Shabbos. And the essence of all Kedusha in the world, and all Bracha in the world, is from Shabbos. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes into the world, the Melech comes into the world that He just created and says, this is all me. And the whole world can recognize their Creator and their King.